Hi learners, welcome back to Reading with Mrs. Evans. We're still reading Roald Dahl's The Twits. I love this story. It's so dramatic and gross and fun, and it's got all the things that as a kid I used to absolutely love, and all that shock value that goes into it. And there's so much inference when you're reading it. It kind of leads you along, and you're building this mental image of the great characterization before you get to the point where it goes, oh no, he's not going to do that with he's not going to eat from the beard. Oh, he just did. So I love how Roald Dahl does that. He couples the inference with his character building, and it just rises and rises, and the tension builds, and then it confirms for you that these are some pretty gross twits. All right, let's move on to Mrs. Twit. Before I go on, here she is. She's such a darling. Mrs. Twit was no better than her husband. She did not, of course, have a hairy face. Phew. It was a pity she didn't, because then at any rate would have hidden some of her fearful ugliness. Take a look at her. Have you ever seen a woman with an uglier face than that? Personally, I don't judge. I doubt it. But the funny thing is that Mrs. Twit wasn't born ugly. She had quite a nice face when she was young. The ugliness had grown upon her year by year as she got older. Why would that happen? I'll tell you why. If a person had ugly thoughts, it begins to show on the face. And when the person has ugly thoughts every day, every week, every year, the face gets uglier and uglier, until it gets so ugly you can hardly bear to look at it. And look, she was quite beautiful. But then clearly she had really ugly thoughts. A person who had good thoughts cannot ever be ugly. You can have a wonky nose and a crooked mouth and a double chin and stick out teeth. But if you have good thoughts, they will shine out of your face like sunbeams, and you will always look lovely. Nothing shone out of Mrs. Twit's face. In her right hand, she carried a walking stick. She used to tell people that this was because she had warts growing on the sole of her left foot and walking was painful. But the real reason she carried a stick was so she could hit things with it, like dogs and cats and small children. And then there was the glass eye. Mrs. Twit had a glass eye that was always looking the other way. And that's the next part, the glass eye. You can play a lot of tricks with a glass eye, because you can take it out and pop it back in again anytime you like. You can bet your life Mrs. Twit knew all the tricks. One morning, she took out her glass eye and dropped it into Mr. Twit's mug of beer when he wasn't looking. Mr. Twit sat there drinking the beer slowly. The froth made a white ring on the hairs around his mouth. He wiped the white froth onto his sleeve and wiped the sleeve on his trousers. "You're plotting something," Mrs. Twit said, keeping her back turned so he wouldn't see that she had taken out her glass eye. "Whenever you go all quiet like that, I know very well you're plotting something." Mrs. Twit was right. Mr. Twit was plotting away like mad. He was trying to think up a really nasty trick he could play on his wife that day. "You'd better be careful," Mrs. Twit said, "because when I see you starting to plot, I watch you like a wombat." "Oh, do shut up, you old hag," Mr. Twit said. He went on drinking his beer, and his evil mind kept working away on the latest horrid trick he was going to play on the old woman. Suddenly, Mr. Twit tipped the last drop of beer down his throat. He caught sight of Mrs. Twit's awful glass eye staring up at him from the bottom of the mug. It made him jump. "I told you I was watching you," cackled Mrs. Twit. "I've got eyes everywhere, so you'd better be careful." There he is, jumping a mile. pay her back for the glass eye in his beer, Mr. Twit decided he would put a frog in Mrs. Twit's bed. Oh, this is not going to end well. He caught a big one down by the pond and carried it back secretly in a box. That night, when Mrs. Twit was in the bathroom getting ready for bed, Mr. Twit slipped the frog between her sheets. Then he got into his own bed and waited for the fun to begin. Mrs. Twit came back and climbed into her bed and put out the light. She lay there in the dark, scratching her tummy. Oh, her tummy was itching. Dirty old hags like her always have itchy tummies. Then, all at once, she felt something cold and slimy crawled over her feet. She screamed. "What's the matter with you?" Mr. Twit said. "Help!" screamed Mrs. Twit, bouncing about. There's something in my bed." "I'll bet it's that giant skelly wiggler I saw on the floor just now," Mr. Twit said. "The what?" screamed Mrs. Twit. "I tried to kill it, but he got away," Mr. Twit said. "It's got teeth like screwdrivers." "Help!" screamed Mrs. Twit. "Save me, it's all over my feet." "It'll bite off your toes," said Mr. Twit. Mrs. Twit fainted. Mr. Twit got out of bed and fetched a jug of cold water. He poured the water over Mrs. Twit's head to revive her. The frog crawled up from under the sheets to get near the water. It started jumping about on the pillow. Frogs love water. This one was having a good time. You can see. And there it is, looking for the water. When Mrs. Twit came to, the frog had just jumped onto her face. This is not a nice thing to happen to anyone in bed at night. She screamed again. "Oh! By golly, it's a giant skelly wiggler," Mr. Twit said. "It'll bite off your nose." Mrs. Twit leapt out of the bed and flew downstairs and spent the night on the sofa. The frog went to sleep on her pillow. Lucky frog. And that's it for today. I wonder what's going to happen tomorrow. Bye.
Stay tuned for more episodes.